I want to tell you about the mask that I'd been wearing my entire life and how I eventually learned to take it off. And before I jump into my story, I'm going to start by throwing a question at you. And that is, what was your face before you were born? Now, this question is an old Zen koan, and it's not something that's meant to be answered literally. It's a Zen device to help the student recognize and witness their lack of an observer, their lack of a self, and their true nature as simply conscious awareness. This is a very key step on the path of self-actualization or enlightenment. So many of the problems in our lives are self-created and manifested through these false identities that we wear, these masks that we put on to protect ourselves that ultimately crush us, limit our ability to be free and to be who we truly want to be. So for me, before I could even intellectually understand what was going on, growing up in an angry and violent home, I learned how to stay safe. And that was through methods of avoidance and through an easygoing sort of attitude in nature. No problem is really a problem if you simply ignore it. This was very successful for me. It allowed me to have that sense of security that I craved, that I needed, that all children need. And by finding the success in this pattern of behavior, it reinforced itself. And as the years went by, it became so natural for me to interact with the world in this way that I lost all sight of how I was behaving. Because there's something that happens when we're young. There's a plasticity to personality. And as we get older, we forget about this. But for those of you that remember, there's a decision that you are actually making. It's at a deep level of your consciousness. So it's subtle, but it is there, and it is a choice. And it becomes concretized by reinforcing certain behaviors. And this becomes our personality. It becomes the identity that we wear. And sometimes, depending on the need when you were young, this is thick armor and it has a heavy gravity because you needed strong armor to keep you safe. But when you become an adult and your circumstances change, life requires much more flexibility. When you're young, when you're a child, as Nietzsche would have, described it, you're accumulating all of the baggage of the world. And you have to bear it and you have to wear it. But if you don't take it off when the time comes, when you transition into adulthood, it becomes so overbearing, it will crush you. I experienced this myself, that I struggled in so many of my interpersonal relationships due to an inability to find real, genuine connection from a lack of feeling safe in my ability to let who my true personality was out. And over time, through concentrated effort, this gets untangled. The problem is that if you don't make this enough of a priority, it can take a very long time. But if we don't start young, then when there's true need for us to let our divinity shine through, we find ourselves unprepared and unready, and we fail those around us. So I had the experience of losing two of my parents at a young age. Not as young as some, but a lot younger than most. And because I had not done all of the work on myself that I knew I needed. I found myself incapable of being the person that I needed to be for those around me. And I'm not saying we have to save everyone, but our power to make a difference is far stronger than we give ourselves credit for. And it can be a method of self-preservation in of itself, trying to pretend like we don't have as large of an impact on those around us as we truly do. Because invisible to our eyes is the ever-growing, ever-shifting, and ever-there net through which we are all in contact, through which everything that we think, feel, or do affects every other living thing. And because it's so subtle, it can be easy to pretend that it's not there or that it's not happening. And we can diminish our sense of responsibility and our sense of impact on those around us. So if we go around carrying this heavy armor on us at all times, we're drawing in others to this negative gravity. It's not allowing us to shine through with the inner light of fire that burns within us. And we get in our own way and we fumble and we struggle. And life becomes much harder than it needs to be. Imagine you were trying to go swimming on a summer day in a swimming pool. And if you were simply wearing a bathing suit, you're free to play in the water and have a blast and swim around. But if you try and jump in that same pool in a full suit of armor, you're going to sink. And maybe you got heat stroke before you even got in the pool. It really changes the whole way we interact with the world around us. When it becomes lighter, we're not so bogged down. We have so much more freedom to play and to not take it so seriously. Now, it's scary realizing that you have no face. But when we wear a mask for too long, we mistake that for our face, then we get into the kind of trouble I'm talking about. And this is imperative to work on while we're young, because there's this natural transition, these different stages of life through which we all go through. We survive our childhood, if it requires surviving. We throw off the baggage in adulthood to find self-actualization and freedom. And then when roles reverse and our parents become older and they begin feeling the tug of their mortality, which in most families in the United States, who I'm speaking to here, I suppose, for the most part, but this is any Western culture, most of our parents aren't prepared for this. And when that tug of death starts grabbing on their toes, they start behaving very weird. And in ways that we never thought that they would, our relationships change forever. And depending on where we're at, is going to entirely shape how they die. Now, yeah, best case scenario, they've done the work themselves. And again, I'm not taking off their responsibility for dealing with their own issues. But when you've transformed yourself into something so much more powerful and something so much more free than the average sleeping person, you gain this tremendous power to give this gift to all those that you come into contact with, and especially your loved ones and those that you are closest to. When we're free, it's so much easier to be that person. And you can change so many lives. You can affect all of those around you, and you can give that smile more freely. You can give that friendly hello. I think a lot of the problem is this sense of a fear of rejection that limits our ability to reach out to those around us. And so we stay withdrawn, cloistered, and isolated. And the way that modern culture continues to grow, this issue becomes worse. We become so segmented into our online spaces, our little avenues of what is acceptable socialization grows smaller and smaller. We find it weird to talk to people in the real world. And that simply reinforces any armor that we might already be wearing. It allows us to really tack it on. And because we aren't even trying to jump into that swimming pool, and we don't notice it until we're heading towards the edge of a cliff that we're expected to fly off of and not sink to the ground. So for me, I found tremendous freedom in this true vision and awareness that I have found, that I have remembered for myself, and this freedom that now dominates my life, that I wouldn't be able to navigate the world without. My existing and just simply living became so heavy and so unbearable that I was ready for it to be over. I was not seeing how I could even want to continue carrying so much baggage, carrying all of this hurt and all of this pain. And by finding that freedom, it saved my life. And now I can speak to this message. I can speak to these ways in which we can liberate ourselves, through which we can find a new spiritual community. We have so much that we could potentially lose. And the time is coming where great flexibility is going to be required from each of us. And the choice is up to you if you will be ready to jump or to sink. So learn to take off that armor. Find stillness. Find the moment between your thoughts through which you can find eternity. So here is the path. If you're still with me, this is the way. Our brains are thought machines. And that's an obvious statement, but think about it. We're constantly filtering through this tangled web of noise. And it will carry you from the start of your day to the end of your day. And you'll never find a break from it. You'll be trapped in a momentum and an inertia that you've found yourself on through which you cannot stop. So the first step on the path is simply finding the space between your thoughts. Pay attention to a thought as it appears, notice that you're thinking, and then watch that thought dissolve, fade away, and disappear until the next thought comes in. It's not just intellectual thoughts you're thinking in a verbal way or a linguistic way, whatever way your brain works. It's emotions as well, the way you're feeling, the way that you're physically feeling. All of these are constructs of a never-ending, perpetual thought machine. When you find that space between those thoughts, you find a brief glimmer and a brief moment of your faceless self, that space in which you have true freedom. As you find this moment and it disappears, you simply try and find that moment again and again and again and again and again and again. And as you continue to find it, you get better at it, and it becomes more of a natural habit to find yourself there. Because remember, these pathways I was talking about that become these deep roots of personality that we develop and strengthen as we grow, through the same sort of principle and method, we can find this open space between our thoughts. Okay, so we find this space, and what do we find there? We find that that armor that we've been carrying around was something that we were simply just holding onto. It wasn't sewn into us. It wasn't branded onto us. It wasn't locked into place. We are holding it there. And as soon as you take that breath and that and find that freedom in that space, you let go of it. And then your thoughts come back and you squeeze again, you contract, you grab it, you put it back into place. You do this just 1,000 times. Just let it go. Find yourself letting it go. And eventually that armor doesn't come back so quickly. It stays off a little bit longer. And in that space that you gain greater and greater maneuverability and greater space within the space, you find that freedom and that flexibility, and you become powerful, and you become a true faceless flame of divinity, which you already are. And I know it's language fails in describing the divine and the superseding nature of reality. So it gets funny trying to talk about it, and language will always fail in describing it. But you find greater space within that space. You unlearn all of these harmful things that you've gathered over the course of your life, and you become powerful, and you become free, and you become the person that you are supposed to be. And you become someone that is helpful, that is creating a better world. Because our innate nature is goodness. Love supersedes everything. And when we strip away all of the clinging and all of the baggage, that is what remains. That is who we truly are. That is what we are always a part of and never separate from. And that is where we find our purpose, our happiness, and our true meaning. So, please, if you're still with me, do yourself the kindness to find that space, take off that armor, and be free. And if you liked this video, please like and subscribe. I will continue making them. I will continue putting this message out into the world. So, thank you for watching, and I appreciate your time.